It's time to start. Are you ready?
Yes.
We're going to start. We're starting. Everyone, welcome to the Nutmeg Tavern. We are very live. See, I'm alive. In this light, you kind of wonder. I'm your host, John Townsend. I'm joined today by someone who's usually in the live stream, but normally you can't see her because she's hiding back there on the other side of the time vortex. But she's joining me in the tavern today, my daughter, Lauren. And Ivy is on the other time. She's over.
Hello, everyone.
There she is. She's over there on the other side of the whirly-twirly thing, moving the levers and whatnot, which I have no idea how all that is supposed to function. We have an incredible episode today that mostly has been put together by Lauren, studying hard the Tombstone lore.
Yes.
What would we call it?
Okay, I'm sure that there is a long 18th century. In fact, here's the title of the book, Gravestones of Early New England and the Men Who Made Them.
There we go.
You could kind of add some more stuff.
Right, blah, blah, blah. The true 18th century title, three pages longer. It was, I don't know, we go to Maine quite often, and Maine has a rich 18th century history. And sometimes we see cool cemeteries and we stop, and it's like, ooh, we're going to go check out this cemetery. Because, of course, around here, the oldest stones are like, I don't know, in the county, there might be something like an 1830s or 40s stone. Maybe. Most are more like 1850s or even later than that. What was the oldest one you think you saw in Pierceton?
Most of them,
70s?
Even then, you can't even read them because they're so faded.
Right. So we don't have terribly old stuff right here. So when we're in Maine, it's like, look, there's a stone from bazillion years compared to. I mean, obviously, you're in Europe. You've got. I'm not even gonna talk about you guys. It doesn't even count. So when we're in Maine, we stop by cemeteries whenever possible. Do you remember? The stopping by the one that was in the woods in, I think, the Phippsburg Peninsula, probably
right.
BI.
And there was very surrounded by its pine forest.
And it had slate, lots of slate stones.
Yes.
And they were right there, mid to late 18th century. It was incredible. And so we're going to be covering lots of that kind of stuff today.
Mm-hmm. You ready?
Yeah, why not?
Okay, so the first person to thank for this is Susan Galligan, and she sent me all this wonderful research, and we wouldn't be having an episode without her, and she's there. So hopefully, if we run across really sticky questions, she might be able to answer.
Is she in there?
Yeah, Ivy popped up a message from her earlier, so excellent.
Wonderful.
Yes, and there's all sorts of very fun things to research, and one of them is the book I mentioned, The Gravestones of Early New England and the Men Who Made Them, and it's by Harriette Merrifield Forbes, and she published it in 1927.
Okay.
So she's kind of a pioneer of this kind of research, and that description's in the link to it's in the description, along with many other fascinating things if you want to kind of delve deeper into this.
We like to share whenever possible, or at least whenever somebody else is doing the research and has the time to put all those links in, which Lauren did.
So if you want to bring up the first slide, I think the first couple slides are the ones that we actually took. You can use your... There you go.
Oh, yeah, there.
So
Ta-da!
this is... I think all the ones that we have are ones that we took in 2018.
Right.
And...
Do you remember this cemetery, Ivy?
I think I vaguely remember stopping at this cemetery.
Because you were in one of the pictures with a camera.
And I think the next two pictures are ones you took.
Right. So I took this one.
And here's this, you can see the classic shape of the tombstone. Mm-hmm. You can see the classic...
The skull,
closely,
the wings.
Yeah, right, the winged skull.
It's like we need a rubbing on this one.
We do, right? And of course, it's not pristine. This one has really
broken and
had some, the elements have taken their toll on this particular one, which is very sad to see.
Yep.
And there's another one. It's just this, we will see this winged skull on many, many of them.
Right. Is there
Okay.
a particular description of what's going on with this particular motif?
They were having trouble describing it, and it seems to be okay. So it's Puritan based,
Okay.
and it seems to be depicting the end of mortality. So
Okay.
that's what the skull's there, and and it's a warning as well,
Right.
because you'll see that in the written form as well. So,
Okay.
they
Oops. I didn't mean to do that.
Wrong
sorry,
one.
Sorry. Oh.
Dad, stop messing with the thing.
Something happened there. So there's that one. Yes.
Okay, what's our next one? So this is the cemetery in Concord, Massachusetts.
Okay.
And it's the same cemetery seen in Amos Doolittle's plate number 2. And if you flip to the next one, see, there it is
Wow.
again. Right? I love it.
You know what? It looks a little different. There. See there. Pretty much the same. I mean, very close. Wonder if we could almost identify, one particular. Even then, this is funny. Even then, some of these stones are like
They're already
tipped
starting to
over,
tilt.
broken.
Right?
Yeah. Wow.
I just love the fact that we can see it here in very close to it. Even at this date, it could be, because a lot of these stones can be 17th century.
Right. So it could be 100 years
So
old.
it could be
as
100
this.
year old.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know specifically the dates on the stones in this particular one, but it certainly could be.
Yeah, that's. Wow.
Yes.
I love that.
Okay, this is an example of the fact that a lot of the early stones were just simple field stones or wooden crosses, and or wooden markers. And because they're wood, we just don't know how many there might have been, because like this one's actually from our Pierceton Cemetery.
Right.
And
This one's from our town.
Yep. And who
we
knows
just
how
took
old it is.
Right.
But it clearly, you can't read anything at all on it anymore. And so who knows how many markers have been lost because of that they were wood originally and they've just faded away.
I'm surprised it's in this good a condition.
Yep.
Because I took a picture of this probably 25 to 30 years ago, and it looked very, very similar. So somewhere in my catalog of old, actual real photographs made on film is an image of this stone or
Wood.
stick, whatever.
So one of the things I ran across, you want to flip back to us, Ivy, for just a second,
Yeah.
or do you want to do? Okay, there you go. So one of the things I ran across while looking at the things was that I tend to think of early graveyards as cemeteries of being right next to the church. But they were saying that for the Puritans, it was more of a civil thing, being
Right.
buried, and so they weren't necessarily next to the church. They could be anywhere. They could be in town. They could be on someone's personal property. You can find them tucked away all sorts of places.
Yeah, that one that we saw in the woods. Now, who knows if there was a church building close by, but it didn't seem like it. It just seemed to be just in a field. And I think that kind of goes with a lot of the Puritan aspects. It's really interesting how some of the cultures that come into North America from Great Britain, some of them are connecting the idea of, say, marriage to a more of a civil thing rather than a religious thing. It's like, no, that a civil ceremony or that ceremony, that's a civil thing and not a church thing. And apparently, the same thing is going on here with the burying people.
Yeah.
Oh, burying.
So somebody was they're talking about the positioning of the stones, and I'm sorry, I don't have this cute little thing for you guys, but you can envision it, the plot as kind of a bed, and you've got the headstone and the footstone, and the headstone is the big one that's ornamented, but it's ornamented on the west side of it because it's facing east, so that at the
right.
resurrection, you're facing east when you're
Okay.
resurrected.
Okay.
And so the headstone's ornamented on the west, and the footstone has probably a couple minor inscriptions on
Like
on the
initials
other
or-
side, right?
right.
So that when you read them, you're not standing on the plot,
Right. That
and
makes sense.
right, and so, and the footstone is not usually decorative. There was one person who had a decorative one that I ran across in all the ones I saw. So not terribly decorated, probably just the name and the date.
Right.
So what did they make them out of? So there's a list here about what they actually made them from. So we've got fieldstone, we've got slate, we've got sandstone, schist, or any other type of stone that was quarried nearby. And then as you get later into the 19th century, that's when you start getting marble. And as beautiful as the marble is, and I love it, it does not hold up anywhere close. The slate, they're describing some of the slate ones, and some of them look like they were carved yesterday.
Right. And all the ones that we've got are marble, and they just, the white marble, you can barely read anything.
Right? Looks gorgeous.
Right.
Does not hold up to the weather.
I think a lot of that was the acid rain that we had in the 70s and whatnot.
Yeah.
There have been some references to pottery.
Really?
Yeah, stones. Probably 19th century. And have you seen the 20th or 21st century ones that are glass? They do like
I saw
giant
one
block
at
of
least.
glass. Those are
That
pretty-
was
pretty cool.
very decorative.
Yeah.
And so one particular person who, and there's a link to it in the description, he was specifically researching Connecticut stones. And the Connecticut stones are brownstone. And it behaves differently than the slate, so the carvings look different. And some of the pictures, and I couldn't confirm it, but I'd look at a picture and I'm like, I bet that's brownstone, because it weathers different, and they actually kind of inscribed them like maybe deeper because the stone kind of just worked differently. And they were very pretty. The slate's my favorite, but the brownstone is very pretty too.
Did you happen to have a chance to look up Gillespie that I mentioned? The person who does the events?
I did not.
Okay.
Dad was saying that there is somebody who actually demonstrated, it was slate, and doing the
stones.
carving.
I believe his name is Gillespie. You can probably find him on Facebook.
I just feel like that would be I never got to see that. That sounds like a wonderful demonstration. Okay, so
I have some super chats if
Okay.
you want.
Go for it.
Okay, Max R. Cool says, "Hooray, this is great."
Thank
wonderful.
And I gotta find the next one here. Commodore Fan 64 says, "Was cremation very popular during this time?"
you. As far as I know, not popular at all.
I don't think they would have
Yeah.
viewed that as a proper thing to do in any way. And
There's a lot. I mean, a lot of this is the idea of, Christ is coming back at the end, and he's gonna bring up the dead. You can even hear about that, like when there's a reading when they're burying sailors at sea, and they're saying, the bodies are going to rise from the sea, and the bodies are going to rise from the earth, and so destroying the body by cremation is like, no, you shouldn't do that.
all right.
And then this Costerness, that's sends in a super chat, and it's their first super chat.
Thank you so much.
And then Brian B sends in a member chat and says, "Here lies Bob, died by drinking cold water."
There is a section where they will list on the stone what the
Means of
person
death.
died from, and I find it very interesting. I'm glad they decide to mention it. Not something that happens nowadays that I've ever run across. Okay, can you bring up? Okay, here we go. So I chose this one because it shows the classic shape of the stones. And so you've got the tympanum, and that's the curved part up at the
Right.
top. And then you have the shoulders, and those are the little curved shoulders on the side.
Right.
And then you've got the side borders, and then the tablet in the center where the writing is.
Right.
And it's just incredible how you'll see the same kind of classic design of the skull and the death's head and the wings over and over and over again. There's some
Well, it fits so nicely.
Well, it
inside
does.
of that,
It
right?
fits
In the
beautifully in there.
tympanum.
And then on the shoulders, you often will have very similar designs right at the top of the shoulder, and then in the scroll side border, you'll see similar ones.
Right.
But it's I'm not sure that I've seen one that is the same as another. They just...
Like each and every one.
Right, each and every one, it's like they were having fun with the fact that they could create an endless amount of variety. And so there really is. Even though you'll see certain symbols used over and over again, each stone feels very distinct. So this particular, and the shapes do change throughout the 18th century specifically. They kind of start losing their shoulders and they morph into slightly different shapes, a little more rectangular, that kind of thing. They usually get taller throughout the 18th century. So, but this is kind of a classic shape of the, and this one's 1773 on the left, and then 1712
50 years
on the
apart,
right,
and they
right?
don't look any real different.
Right.
And one of the things I remember too, especially on the slate ones, how thin they were.
Yes.
They looked scarily thin. We think, it's got to have some real bulk to it, but not always
Yeah, the
like
slate, like our granite ones, and like the granite's not going anywhere.
Yeah. It's 6 inches thick.
But the slate feels very delicate. But they are some of them beautifully preserved. So, all right. So we're not really going to get into the change much. We don't have many pictures of the change, but right around 1800, there's a huge shift, and everything goes just like the clothing. Everything switches to neoclassical, and they get much simpler, and urns and weeping willows and right. So there's a huge change.
Right.
So here on our left, the 1716 stone. This is an example of instead of a death's head, we have now a winged soul. So they're not an angel, it's the person, or
like
it
a
is
death mask, or just
a representation of the person and now in flight. So they start coming in around in the 18th century, but you still have your classic the winged skull over here, and this, our winged soul is 1716, and the death's head is 1732, and they will both be used throughout the entire 18th century, but it starts to become the proportion changes as you go.
More interesting. The death's head on this one has a crown.
Yes, that's the glory in the resurrection. That's that symbol.
There we go. Wow. Ooh.
Oh, so this is an example of the fact that this is actually a little bit later. This is portrait, and we'll run across more examples of this, and it's a depiction of just the person. But they were talking about the fact that when you say portrait, it doesn't necessarily mean that they were trying to make it look like the deceased, right? It is more
what I want to look like.
Maybe.
I don't think that's what I would want to look like.
Right. Because in this one, when I first looked at these two pictures, because it's two pictures joined together, I thought I just had duplicate pictures until I'm like, no, look, this person has like little feathery scales.
Well, have you ever tried to chisel out a face?
Right, that is exactly what I was thinking. I'm like, there's only so close you can get a portrait. When this is what you're working with. So this is what we have here, and that was my example of the fact that the portraits can be very, very similar to each other.
Everybody looks the same in the 18th century.
That's right. Oh, okay. So here on our left we have another portrait, but this is a little more. So on our right we've got kind of a winged soul, but he's wearing a wig. So
right.
And then but on our left we have something that feels more like a realistic portrait because she's got
pearls.
She's got the Lisa pearls,
right? And her,
or is it Marge or is it Lisa that has the?
It would be Marge, wouldn't it? With the pearls,
and then that hair looks so not 18th century.
No, it doesn't. And I don't know if it's supposed to be a bonnet. Do you think it's supposed to be a bonnet?
Maybe, but it doesn't look like a bonnet to me.
I know it looks like a hairstyle to me, but it might be representing a bonnet.
Maybe.
And then she's has, and then it details her clothing.
Right, like a bed jacket.
Kind of looks like it. So.
No, other
it's
guy's
Lisa.
wearing scales and feathers.
Right, he's got feathers instead. So. All right, so what's
with a wig? You think I'd fly off as he was?
He's got it.
He must have glued down.
I'm going to go with that. So here's one more, I love these. These are some of the pictures that
Here
Sue sent.
lies the body.
Yes, just classic.
Wow.
With how they would phrase it, and I liked both of these. It can be. I found it hard to get pictures of the actual stones themselves. It's hard to take pictures of them. So
They don't fit in a 16 by 9,
no,
that's for sure.
but these turned out great. So.
Yeah. Wow.
Okay, so here is, I picked this set because this is an early example of both our Death's Head over here and our Winged Soul over on.
Yeah.
So 1703 for both of them.
Right.
And I really liked how deep the stone cutting is here on the right. Like some of them you see, they barely do, like it's more, they're just stenciling each one in. But over here on the right, they are cutting in very deep. And these are the ones that I wonder if they're working with maybe a brownstone instead, because it could be slate,
Maybe
but
something softer.
Yeah, maybe something
I don't
a
think
little
you could do slate that like that. The relief on that. No, I don't
That's
think
right.
so at all. Nope.
Okay,
still here,
so
don't worry.
I'm trying to remember why I picked this one, and I do remember why I picked this one. So this one I picked because the little hourglass with wings up at the top. So there's tons of other symbols that you'll see worked in. A lot of the ones that we've seen so far are, just the either the skull or the people, but there are other classic symbols that are used. And this hourglass, either like this with wings, being time flying, or sometimes you'll see the the hourglass over on its side because time has stopped for the person.
Okay.
So there's that. And then also on here, I'm pretty sure that this G that's right over the head, I think that's the signature of the stone cutter. So we'll see at least one other example of a signature.
Kind of right there in the center. That
Well,
seems
he
a
was
little
proud of
like-
it.
Yeah,
He
must
thought this
have.
one was a
Must
good
have.
one.
Ivy, you want to catch up?
Yes, I do. Okay, so Rupert Chet sends in a super chat and says, "Do you believe in ghost stories from Christmas?"
Ghost stories from Christmas. I don't know what to tell you about that.
Don't have an answer. Sorry.
Okay, Guard of Martyrs says, "Thank you for preserving our history."
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Deborah Peters sends in a super chat, and it's her first super chat.
Hey,
Thank you.
And then Mike Howell says, "Happy Friday, Townsends. Just want to brag about my amazing partner brought me a Nutmeg Tavern mug for my birthday." And then there was a super chat from, it's not, my pop-up chat isn't working.
Uh-oh.
Another,
It's frozen.
yes.
Here, let's try to give it a kick. Try that. Oh, it's still frozen?
Nope, it's
Still frozen. Oh, gosh.
And
There it goes.
then Crocherness sent in another super chat, and she said it was her daughter's birthday today. Her daughter, Xena. Did I say it right, Lauren?
I think it's Xenia.
Xenia.
So a very happy
Xenia
birthday
Rose,
to Xenia.
and
Happy
she's
birthday.
5 years old.
Yes.
Very
So
exciting.
happy birthday.
That's right.
And then Sea of Whiskey sends in a super chat.
Thank you
Thank
very
you
much.
very much.
There we go. I'm all caught up.
Okay.
Excellent.
Wait.
Sorry.
Somebody mentioned mugs. Let's talk about mugs.
Oh, yes. Yes.
I thought she was going to say something. New mug designs. See, you can't see them. I told you couldn't.
Oh, you can see them in the side cam better.
Okay.
Oh,
Here
okay.
we go. There we go. The flavor of the 18th century. It's got a nutmeg, and it's nutmeg colored.
This one is
great.
absolutely.
Is this one the same? Yeah, same. Very. This is. I mean, the color seems a little shifted in here. It's a really nice sage green.
It is. I called it spring green, and it looks a little warm in here, but it is
Right.
a little bluer.
And it's a matte. It's not a super shiny. It's got the same flavor of the 18th century. And this is actually a picture of my nutmeg tree at home. I don't have a nutmeg tree at home, but if I did, it would look just like that. We have seen some needs nutmeg, and it's got the hand with the, wait, let me reproduce it here. The hand with the nutmeg. There it is, in a beautiful cobalt blue, and then the chestnut and moss.
Green, just green.
Chestnut and green. Again, the needs nutmeg. These are new mugs available on the website. There's probably a link down in the description section, right?
I think Ivy can drop it into
Or
the
she can
chat.
drop it into the
I
chat.
don't think I added it to the description.
Except I lost the things you set up for me when Dad rebooted the computer. So
Don't.
I will find it.
I can add it to the description later. I added lots of things to the description, but not that.
Yeah, there's a lot. You want back to beautiful slides? Or
Hold on, let me get to my next thing that I have highlighted. Okay, here we go. Yes, this is who carved the stones. So that's going to come up here. So.
okay. Who carved the stone?
Oh, here we go. So this has some more symbols on it. There's the hourglass, and then here
Sea
is
serpent? No, it's a rooster.
it's a rooster.
It's a rooster.
His neck is quite long, but he is a rooster. I don't know what's on the left. I can't tell from this picture what it is.
Cross?
Could be.
Notice how crosses are not.
No, they're not. The Puritans.
Right.
That was a graven image to the Puritans, and
Right.
they did not depict it.
Right.
So
Love the ship.
You don't say.
Hey.
You will see a lot of. Usually, the ones with ships on them are for sea captains or people connected to the sea. They got ships on theirs.
Right. Actually, I think it's a bark. But go ahead.
So the rooster is a symbol of the resurrection. He's
Right.
calling in for the dawn.
Right.
So that's what we got on this one. You want to switch to the next one?
Nope. Yeah, I can do that.
There you go. Okay.
Whoa.
Here we've got a
Full-on
full
skeleton.
skeleton, which you do run across, but they're not that common. And then over here we've got probably time with the scythe.
But wings and a scythe, and it's not a skeleton, and he looks like a dude. That's weird.
I figured he was Father
It's
Time
like
because
Father
he's got an hour.
Christmas with a Father Christmas
With
with,
a
wings
scythe.
and a sickle.
And then he's got his little hourglass, and
Yeah.
I don't think he's wearing shoes, which I don't know. That kind of threw me. You think he might be?
Slippers,
Maybe.
moccasins.
Okay, what's our next one? Oh, so this one. Hold on. Where's my picture? You want to switch back to us while I find my picture? Okay, not that one. Here we go. Okay, so while it says something about King of Terrors up at the top, I think they're referring to death.
Okay.
I don't actually know that. I was just guessing from the thing. But underneath it says, "Through Christ I will conquer, rise and reign forever." So it's not a... It is a triumphant...
Oh, I think it
line
says something.
Yeah, you must submit
you must
to the
submit
king.
to the king of death.
So I think that's death. And then
Okay.
you're like, but through Christ we will conquer, rise and reign.
Oh,
So
yeah. There we go.
they're not... Like, sometimes you look at them and you're like, is this morbid? But
Right.
I don't interpret it that way.
Not for them.
So, no.
Not for them. At all.
Okay, so we were on our carvers. So what's our next one? Oh, so this has Memento Mori, right?
Yeah, there you go.
Classic. And there are other Latin phrases that they would use. Time flies, and other ones that had to do with time. But the Memento Mori, do you want to switch back to you and do the Memento Mori thing?
Do I want
In case people haven't run across the concept of Memento Mori.
supposed to talk about that?
If you'd like to, sure.
Remember your death, and it's something that really shows up in probably 16th, definitely 17th century. We see it here in the 18th century. That's where you'll see skulls, and it's meant to be one of those. Your life doesn't last forever, so you use it wisely, kind of a situation. And if we, it's the don't forget that each and every day, sort of the opposite of carpe diem, and kind of a sort of I don't know.
Right, that and time flies and carpe diem. They're all trying to get at that. Don't waste the time you have.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so I chose these guys because I liked that you could see that not everyone's
Stone
winged.
was just crazy beautiful. I mean, that is like the silliest looking little, like bug-eyed and weird wings and...
And they talk about it here when they're talking about the different sculptors. Not everyone had the same level of skill. So you would have, especially later on, you would have very skilled stone carvers. But in more isolated areas, you might have your stone carved by the local carpenter. And he might not have a lot of...
okay. I probably couldn't do any better than that.
I couldn't do this.
You could do better than that, but I
don't know if I could do it in stone. So I
like the way they look like bats over here.
Well, I kind of like how even here, like the other ones do feel like folk art, but here you get that feeling even more clearly.
Right.
Very distinctive, and they've worked in all sorts of decorative borders.
And the one is for children.
It is, and like they didn't. Even though you wonder, like, does this person not have as much experience with stone carving? But they still went to a lot of effort to decorate it very thoroughly.
And all that, yeah. Mm-hmm. Wow.
Okay, so I picked this one because I love how extremely detailed this one is. Yeah. He's got his tricorn hat. He's got his wig.
He's got his walking stick.
Yeah. He has his walk. You can see his coat.
And he's in the tympanum.
He is.
Instead of the winged death's head or anything like that.
It's like he's walking and going somewhere.
Oh, yeah. So switch back a couple ones to the Memento Mori one.
Okay.
Because this one too,
it's a mix,
right? This one feels he's got his death's head above him, but there he is, kind of in the center, and he also is very detailed. He's got, you can see his coat, you can see his collar, you can see his buttons, how long his buttonholes are.
He's got a neck 0 inches long.
0 inch and tons of tiny buttons, which makes me think, we can't actually see the date on this, but how many buttons he has on his waistcoat makes me think it's kind of early. So.
But the rest of the design does not say early to me.
No, it's very complex.
It seems late 18th century in one sense, and so I don't know.
Maybe he was just old-fashioned.
He could have been, and some of the stones were made for people later. Maybe a grandson might put up a stone, maybe a new stone for someone to replace one that had worn out. So that is the case at times.
Yeah, that's interesting. Interesting.
Okay, I think I chose this one. See, I did these slides today, and still I'm already wondering, why did I pick this one? I think I picked it maybe for the inscription and the writing and the fact that there's a lot of capitals. I think these are both capitals, right? No, not the one on the right. But the one on the left is all capitals, right? Yeah. So there's a very kind of, this does both. So here on the left, this is early, 1691, and it's all capitals, and it says, "Here lies the body of." Right. And that is classic how they started. They're almost all worded that way.
Notice he was almost 70 years old. Yes.
And then over here on the right, we're all the way into 1756. So, and already they've started to use lowercase letters, and it's in memory of instead. So the wording starts to soften, and it changes.
Look at how they had a problem with, they got to the edge, and Joseph runs over, and Ebenezer runs over the edge of the line. It was like, we don't have to mess with them.
It makes you wonder, how far ahead in advance the stonecutter plotted out, how did he... Or
not at all, apparently.
Right? How did he decide how to get it on the tablet?
Yeah.
And they did. They kind of squished it.
I don't know if it's time or just simplicity here. Look at the simpleness of the stone. They didn't do any curves. They didn't do anything. The engraving is completely, one is just simplistically a V carve in, even it's almost like a smiley face up there.
Right. So it could be that this is just a much less skilled carver here on the right.
Exactly.
Who doesn't, didn't plot it out in advance to get the words.
It's still
perfectly
interesting.
I still couldn't do a stone like that.
Whoa, this one's
okay, this one, let me see if I could find my note about
please
this
give
one.
us some information about this one.
So this one's a memento mori, and this is for a 6-year-old. Wow. So this is Helen.
That makes it more creepy. Yeah.
It's very sad. Well, and you can see the truth of the fact all through these graveyards that infant mortality and child mortality is so much higher because there's so many stones for them. But
also take that in context of there are people, there are different sections of society, and different people will say that because children died so much in this time period that parents didn't get as connected with them, right? But obviously, if you have a stone like this made,
right,
you care.
Yes.
Right? It's just like,
absolutely,
even if you're losing a bunch of children, each and every one of those is, a painful separation, and it isn't one of those, oh, well, we've got 6 more, no biggie, right? No, they cared about their children just as much as anybody would today.
And this one has an epitaph that we can't, it's a little hard to read it here, but Sue gave me it here. So, fresh as the morn, the fragrant bud hangs withered ere it's blown. And then at the base of that, you can kind of see that there is a
plant,
a flower stem that's snapped, and that's an illustration of that. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
Incredible. Next.
Okay, so this one, I actually picked just for the one on the right because I like that. It has the winged soul. He's still there, but the skull and crossbones is actually very evident.
The skull is a little bit messed up.
Well, it's a side view.
Right.
I just like the side view of the skull.
And a little death's head tucked in there.
Right, just a little winged soul right underneath him.
All right.
That's the reason I picked that one.
Wow.
Now this one, there was a mystery about a particular carver, and that's why I picked this one. So you can see up at the top of it, it says JN. And from reading about the gravestones, I don't think they've managed to trace this particular carver. So you want to flip back to us for just a second. Flip back to this one. So they were talking about the different ways you could find out who carved the different stones. And sometimes they signed them. And often there's families of stone cutters or people who work sometimes in the more populated areas, there are dedicated stone cutters. And so they're not hard to know. They're like, okay, I know who did this stone. They signed it, and I am familiar with their work, and no problem documenting who it is. And then other times, you have to trace it back from maybe the probate records. So you can say, okay,
who got paid to...
Right, who got paid for this stone, and then maybe you can find out who the carver is that way. And then there are other times where there are people who they're like, well, that's the stone cutter. They don't actually know who it is, but they know that
it's like all the ones in this.
Right, you can see his work. You're like, yep, that belongs to him, and that one and that one. He didn't sign them. I don't actually know who it is, but I know all this work is his because it all looks the same. So there are
some potters are like that, where it's just like, well, I mean, obviously this is the same guy. We might only have initials or whatever.
Yep. So if you want to flip back to the picture.
Yeah, if I can.
So this one, it's quite intricate, and that's it sounded like it was kind of unusual to have it so intricate and not be able to know who the J-N is, who signed it, but it's got these peacocks on it
I was just
next to the hourglass, and it's very decorative. So I pulled this because I'd read the story about it in the book, and so when I found the slide for it, I'm like, okay, that one's getting added in. So
and 68 years old, 1703.
Yeah.
People don't necessarily live short lives. If they can make it to, through to adulthood, they quite often.
Oh, I picked this one because you can see the guidelines that they've traced on it. And I remember distinctly when we were at one of the graveyards in Maine, I really loved seeing that, the markings, so that you could make sure that your writing was straight, because I was envisioning if I was trying to make a gravestone that I definitely would do that, because that's what I do when I'm trying to get my writing straight just on paper, and that I can erase, and you cannot erase when you're doing stone. So although there are actually some examples of reworked stones. I didn't make a slide of one of them because it's hard to see in the photograph, but you can see that at times they did rework them. And I just loved that there was evidence of the fact that the person plotted it out, and they're like, okay, it's going to be like this. Then there's the line for the capital letters. There's the
Even
line
that
for the
little
lowercase.
E, there's a, to fit those up there. Okay.
Yes.
Ivy, you want to catch up?
Yes. So we have, let's see, okay. Yes, we have Matt Fedorka. Check out the Crypt Center Church on Green in New Haven, is CT, Connecticut.
Yes.
Colonial era cemetery preserved when the church was built there over in the early 1800s.
I think I ran across a picture of that when I was doing my research, and they were talking, not all of them are outdoors. There's this one.
Wow.
And I loved that idea because I'm sure it's beautifully preserved,
Yeah.
because it would be protected from the weather. And so I'm sure it's a wonderful one to visit.
And Heather T says, raise a mug to the dearly departed. And Valerie L says, folks fascinated by headstones are called taphophiles.
I had no idea. I like that there's a word for everything.
Like cenotaph, taphophile. Okay.
And Vigilant Cosmic Penguin asked, was the skull and crossbones used as a general symbol of death? I always assumed it was just a marking of danger.
As far as I know, they, in this time period at least, in the 17th century, I seem to see more of them in the 17th century, the skull and crossbones, used as a mortality symbol. And it is, just for death. Although...
Poison, death, it kind of,
Right.
they go together.
And then maybe it morphed, perhaps in the 19th century when
Right.
when they softened the symbols for death. That might have been when,
Right.
I'm guessing here, that might have been when it kind of moved over to being a danger symbol. So there is a little note here about, I love their description about it. They're like, well, they're symbols, and we know they mean things, and we have a good guess about some of them, but other ones we're not quite so sure. And also, people definitely disagree about what exactly the symbols mean.
Maybe they meant different things to different people.
That's right. So, but they did talk about how you'd have like a candle flame and it meant life, and then you might have a being snuffed out, being death, or you might have a coffin or a pick or a spade or a pall, all of them representing mortality. Or sometimes there's fruit, figs, pineapples, prosperity and eternal life could mean both or either of those things. And then flowers could be the frailty of life. So there are some educated guesses about what the symbols specifically meant. I'm sure that some of them are very clear and others become a little more. Yeah, they went with life everlasting, or I liked life's pilgrimage because that's actually what I associate shells with during the time period. So I liked that example.
Like you sail in a shell or something?
No,
That's all right. Go ahead. Is it? Next. I'm not going to fight over that one.
Okay, so
I always thought it was seafood, but maybe it's so bad that it kills you.
it wasn't a symbol. So we have the question of who wrote the inscriptions, because you'll have kind of a formula for what would be written on it. Here lies the body of, and then usually it gives how old they were and then the date they died. And often there will be an epitaph or a verse or an inscription. So there's all sorts of different things that could be used, and some of them are very common. The one about, I'm going to get it wrong if I try to quote it from memory. I'm sure it's here in my pieces of paper.
Like 5,000 pieces
right?
of paper.
And it's addressing the person who's reading the gravestone and saying,
Look out.
I used to be
careful.
alive and now I'm dead, and you're going to be dead too someday. And that's a form of memento mori. And so this is asking who chose the inscriptions, and they're guessing that probably the carvers had a lot to do with it. Maybe the carvers had different ones, then you could pick one, but they were kind of referencing the fact that a lot of carvers use similar length ones on their stones. So that being an example of the fact that they didn't use 5 words and 15 words. They usually stuck to one length or the other. So they probably had suggestions about which ones to use.
Every week, take a break.
Okay.
She's still got hundreds of pages here. Every week I try to get to the brand new Patreon. Is this the one from last week?
There it is.
Right.
Don't listen again.
This is the one from last week. Thank you, brand new Patreon people. This week, last week, Riddle, Tiny Werebear, John Kelly, Lone, Danet Boji, Maria Louise, Andrew. Nope, that's and then Townsends Plus people. Andrew L. Perry, N. Melissa C. Eric M. Merrick V. Also wonderful Patreon or old Patreon folks that have been supporting us for a bazillion years. Yes, a bazillion. Leslie Spivey, Sandy Huskin, Lisa Fittenhoff, John Gibson, and Vincent Romano, and also new and renewing Townsend's YouTube members. Yes, it just goes on and on. John and Jane Doe, Richard Sims, A. Anonymous, Ben Edwards, Kevin Morgan, Kitty named Bunny, Steph Snow, and Tony York, all super supporters.
Did you guys talk about last week's episode?
Not yet.
Oh, we haven't. That's true. Okay.
Super thank you to Simeon, because he helped us so much with that episode. In fact, he basically did the whole thing. If you're interested in Simeon's work, you can find it. Is it in the description?
No, but Ivy was going to drop it in the chat. But it's SimeonEngland.com, so it's not hard to find.
SimeonEngland.com. You can also find him on Facebook. He does amazing work with pipe tomahawks and maybe who knows what else. And a great friend, a very kind and sharing person. So thank you so much, Simeon. And make sure to check out that episode. It's not because, someone holds a thing. Sometimes YouTube kind of suppresses those things, so you might have to go and search it out. But there it is. It's what happens in history. So, what are we going to do? Right? Next week's or this week's Sunday episode, we're revisiting pemmican. And actually, it was really good. The batch I made this time.
Really?
You guys,
It actually tasted good. I'm glad to hear it. I worry about all those people carrying that food and it didn't really taste good.
So it's been like 9 years since we did our giant pemmican series. So we came back and said howdy to pemmican one more time because it's such an important and wonderful food source. Also, yes.
The CD.
I was just...
You were just...
Just grabbing it. Last week we announced...
There you go.
The Caleb Lewis CD. So Caleb is one of the videographers, editor. He does amazing music stuff on his own, and he's done some of the music for some of our episodes. He put these together as an entire CD, kind of longer length pieces instead of just little snippets. So super thank you to Caleb. You can find these on our website, and there's a link someplace.
Okay, Ivy, can you make this scroll up a little bit?
I don't think she can.
Anyway, somebody was commenting about where the...
Wait a minute.
There you do.
Oh, look
You
at that.
got it.
Excellent.
You did it.
Oh, look, there it is. So, a little bit farther up because that
There you
same
go.
person, but it wasn't the one I was thinking of. So buying seafood was talking about where the seashells are associated with pilgrimages. And so when they had pilgrimage journeys, they would mark the stopping places with seashells. So
Isn't that mentioned in the Canterbury Tales?
I think so. It's very common because even I have run across it. So
So it isn't because they ate bad seafood and died.
No, Dad.
no, the seafood was delicious. And okay, there was another one I was thinking of, but I think it's too far away. Okay, this is talking. Okay, so we've got a couple more slides.
Yes.
Okay, did that one. Okay, all right.
Oh, that's much
so
later.
This
That's
one,
boring 19th century. I can tell from here.
let me see if I can find my actual. Oh, here we go.
See 1827.
I know, but see, look at this one.
Yeah?
So
Yeah.
you can see that this first lettering up here at the top is backwards. Everything else is
The guy messed it up. He did it backwards.
right, and so probably because that particular person was illiterate, the person who was doing the carving.
What?
So, but can you imagine?
No
Here you are.
way.
Can you see how expensive those are? Can you imagine you get done with this stone and you realize that you made a
Wouldn't
mistake?
you just
like
grind
that?
it like flat?
See,
and
I
then
would
make
have
it
thought
bigger
so, but they
something?
didn't. It's backwards. I was deeply surprised by this.
That's weird.
I was
On
very
both
surprised.
of them?
Right? Okay, so
No, the whole top is. It's like the first line and the second line is backward. There's no way. It
How
must
would
be
you-
because it was mechanically done and.
that could be because this being a little bit later, they may be moving into having it be more mechanized.
Looks kind of mechanical.
right?
I
See,
mean,
that's
it's
just
very-
what happens when you move away from craftsmen.
Yeah.
So,
I would have gotten a refund. No way. I'm not paying for this stone.
okay, and we already talked about the movement from capitalized to not capitalized. So, okay, I think that can you blow out the candle?
What? You don't like all this wax going everywhere?
I don't love it.
It's a symbol
really.
of death right there. I'm just saying.
Okay, so here's my list of
Do you
manner.
have these in slides?
No, I'm sorry,
Okay.
I don't have these in slides.
Go ahead.
This is my list of manner of death, and this guy was bitten with a mad dog November 18th, 1771.
So he was bitten and the dog was bitten?
I'm
It says,
assuming
it says
You
bitten
been
with.
right.
Or someone had a mad dog and they just like made the dog bite him.
I'll bite you with this dog.
They specifically talked about how wording and spelling, both of them, could make these at
very
times a little
creative.
tricky to decipher. So even this, you'll often have just a Y for the,
Right.
and like November the 18th.
Right.
And it's just a Y. And then,
Well, actually, it's a Y-E, so it's the
true.
thorn, whatever.
Yes, right. And then they did, there it is again.
Yep.
And, just to shorten it, because if I was carving, I would like any shortening method to make it easier for me to write what was going on. And
Was that
then,
another means of death over there on that one? You didn't.
so this one is fascinating, and I do wish I had made slides of this one. So, this one is somebody who died in a storm. And then this one is someone who died in a storm, and they're both in the same day in the same year, but they're quite a ways apart from each other.
It like takes you a week to. You'll have to just set up a tent at this guy's stone so you can read the book.
And I think, here we go. Stones miles apart. So same storm, because it's the
Same
same
storm.
date and everything. So
Oh, wait, hold on.
here we go. Here's the other one.
You'll have to squint.
They actually do. The side camera is really helpful for that. Okay, so this guy, he is later. He's 1824, but he was instantly killed by the fall of a shed in his 16th year.
He's
So
over there.
I'm sorry. And then it has a poem that is composed here. One moment seen in blooming health, looking for years to come. The next a corpse, oh solemn thought, his sun has set at noon. And on the, there you go. They've actually, it has a sun up here at the top. So
I thought that was a shell.
No, it's a sun.
It's
You
a
can
rising
see the
sun- a
you can see the kind of
Oh,
eyes of
the
it.
rays of it. Okay.
Although it doesn't
Oh, yes,
really make
eyes.
sense that it's a setting sun when it
Well,
said it was
he's-
struck down at noon.
Well, it's
But I
just
do
showing
like
a
it,
part of
yes.
it. It's
No,
like
it's a full sun.
we're just
It's
only
just
seeing
seeing
part of it
part of
because
it.
it's not
Just
actually
like a
the.
porthole we're
Okay,
looking
it
into.
does kind of look like a shell though.
You're right. It does. But this is one of the few ones where I've seen where the picture that we see is linked to what's actually written
Said
in the
on,
poem. So, you
There's a sun.
you wonder sometimes if because you would only be able to do that if you told the stonecutters specifically and they worked on your stone specifically, and it would be quite a while before the stone was ready. And in the research, they were talking about how they were actually tracking the time, like when someone requested the stone and then when they set it up, and like looking at their diaries and everything. And often it was very close. Like they asked for a stone and the person cut the letters into it and gave them the stone, and they
So
put it
it's
up.
like, which design would you like?
Yes.
I got one with a death's head, or I got one with a shell, or whatever.
Right. So the fact that the stone carvers were probably working throughout all the time, probably the winter, they were making the stones, and then they would carve, they would customize them to the person quickly. By So there we go. This, I think, yes, that was the end of my manner of deaths. And I was surprised. I don't.
So you think he was in the shed and it fell on him, or just a shed dropped from the sky? What do you think?
I think he was in the shed.
Okay,
It fell on.
just wondering. These days, you might actually be crushed by a shed. Just dropped and be dropped.
That's
on.
true. It could happen.
I have a poem that fits with today's theme somewhat. This is from the 18th century by William Blake, A Poison Tree. I was angry with my friend. I told my wrath did end. I was angry with my foe. I told it not, and my wrath did grow. And I watered it in fears, night and morning with my tears, and sunned it with smiles, and with soft deceitful wiles. And it grew both day and night, till it bore an apple bright. And my foe beheld it shine, and he knew that it was mine. And into my garden stole, when the night had veiled the pole, and in the morning glad I see my foe outstretched beneath the tree.
It kind of reminds me of the Oompas tree.
Yes.
You fall asleep under the Oompas tree and you wake
Don't-
up dead.
Don't fall asleep, yeah. And then you wake up dead.
So did you tell him who it was by?
William Blake, yes.
I just,
1794.
I think it's from the same group of poems as Tiger Tiger.
Yes. Yes. So did we cover it? Did we get it all?
There are many more details, but that is the kind of the ground I really wanted to cover. So if people have questions, I will do my best to remember.
Yeah, we had a whole set of questions, but obviously the topic got away with us. Did you have any things you wanted to grab up and ask us, Ivy?
Let me check and see. I think there were some super chats. Okay. Allie Burden said, honestly, this episode has been great window shopping for my future headstone. Keep us posted on if you'll start carrying them. LOL. Thank you for a fun and spooky episode on this pretty fall day.
It is a beautiful fall day.
Yes.
In fact, we were, this morning, we went out to, I'm trying to remember the name of the buffalo place.
Yes.
Wings something?
Bison.
Bison, yeah.
I was using the 18th century term.
Now I'm really going to mess it up. anyway, it was a beautiful fall day, especially if we're going out and shooting.
And our colors are
Pictures of
probably at
bison.
peak.
Yeah.
So, and the sun was shining, so it lit up
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah. It's going to get cold and nasty for trick-or-treaters.
But we enjoyed it today because it was lovely. Yes. When we went to Maine and saw the slate headstones, I said to myself, I want a slate headstone. I don't really care for the granite ones very much. But the slate ones always look, there's just something about them. They look beautifully just decorative, and even the lettering
and the
looks
gray
great.
and gray and everything.
It's very
they
nice.
just are gorgeous.
When I saw the brownstone ones, I'm like, oh, those are nice too. But they did not move me away from the slate. I'm like, slate it is. Very pretty.
Yeah, in fact, today, or was it yesterday? Was it yesterday that we went out and shot the? It was yesterday that we went out and shot the
yes.
thumbnail. Right?
Yes.
And even Pearston, there's some fun and interesting stones there, even though it's not a tremendously old.
Yeah, they're probably 19th century, but there's flowers. There's
I'm always drawn to the old sections.
Yep.
The new sections holds no interest as far as I'm concerned. It's like, other than
they're not old
people
enough
live there.
yet.
Yeah,
They haven't weathered enough. So unless I know someone there,
I think just design wise, I mean the aesthetic.
Yeah.
Is
Rub Xena Warrior Princess says, my kids want to know if you're dressing up for Halloween.
well, it's not hard to do. If we want to dress up for Halloween, all we got to do is just walk out on the streets like
Yeah.
this, and we're all set, right? I would put on a hat if I was.
I wear a T-shirt for
Dad puts on a baseball cap. It's in disguise for Halloween.
Actually, it was very funny. I was at a conference last weekend.
Yes,
At a
that
conference
was
last
very
weekend.
funny.
I was talking to one of the presenters. Just out in the thing. We were talking for a good 3 or 4 minutes, maybe 5 minutes, and he finally recognized me. He's like, no. That was very funny because he did not know who I was.
In modern garb, it
Yeah.
works great.
Yeah,
Yes.
so I'm always in disguise. So, anything else? Are we good?
Are we all caught
Yep,
up?
I think we're good.
We are all caught up. It has been so much fun. Thank you, Ivy, for your work on that side. Lauren, you put in a tremendous quantity for this one.
Well,
and,
thank you,
it was a fun
Susan
topic.
Galligan, who
Yes.
sent me all this wonderful stuff. It was
Yes.
a really fun
thank you, Susan.
thing to delve into. So that was
Yeah,
great.
a great topic and of great interest, and it really connects with, the difference that our world is like today, and this gives us that kind of snapshot of how they thought about things differently, how they symbolize things differently. So, a tapophile.
The taphophile, the lover
yes,
of the
exactly.
stones.
Right.
Absolutely.
And we always like to go to cemeteries. So
But we'll have a new. I'm looking forward to visiting the main graveyards again. And
yeah,
kind
and
of
they
having
actually
a new
have a
appreciation.
guidebook of
Yeah.
cemeteries, which is really neat. So, what's that one that has the fence that has the weeping willows in?
I'm not sure the name, but it
cast
has
iron?
a cast iron fence, and
Yeah.
I'm sure it's 19th
Oh, yes.
century. I'm
Oh,
sure,
yes.
but it is very lovely and
Right.
always fun to drop by.
I'm supposed to be wrapping up. Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, Ivy. Thank you, amazing Patreon and Townsends Plus and Townsends YouTube members and people that go buy merch. You help it make it possible that we can sit here and have fun talking about the 18th century. You're the people who do that. It's your fault. Don't blame me. It's your fault. So thank you so much, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Thanks for watching.